how you got here, how you built blockchain.com, and a little bit your journey to know till now.
Sure. So, and thanks for having me on the podcast. We're very lucky to get a sunny day in London, which is exciting.
That's right. That's really right.
But so blockchain.com started as an open source software project. So there were three of us that were really interested in Bitcoin, because there was only Bitcoin at the time. And so we were building sort of tools to make Bitcoin more useful. And so, blockchain has always been a company that responded to consumer demand. And then later to institutional demand, and then later to enterprise demand. And so what I mean by that is like, we were building solutions for folks in the Bitcoin space, and then later the digital asset space as a whole. The company, rather than an open source software project, but a company, got started in about 2013. We raised our first venture capital in 2014, so about 12 years ago now. So, well, it was the end of 2014, so 11 years. And it's been a really incredible journey since then. Today we run one of the largest consumer businesses in the industry, about 40 million verified users. We run one of the largest institutional businesses in the space. We have about 2,000 clients around the world.
Wow.
And then we run a large infrastructure business. We're sort of one of the largest stakers, one of the largest liquidity providers to exchanges globally, as one of the largest validators in the world as well. And so we're really a key sort of piece of the backbone of the industry from both a consumer perspective as well as an enterprise perspective. And one of the things I like to tell people is, even if you don't have an account with us, which I suppose like 20% of all crypto accounts are with us, but if you're not part of that 20%, you almost certainly have traded with us at some point, because we are usually the liquidity or processing behind about half of the space. And so, what does that mean from a sort of practical perspective? It means a lot of volume. I think in the last 2 or 3 years, we've done about 1.5 trillion of transactional volume.
Wow.
And so, every day there's a lot of bits and atoms floating through our systems. And, our mission is to help keep crypto running and keep it running smoothly.
That's incredible numbers, and congratulations on such a incredible journey. And I think you're one of the biggest experts that we have in blockchain and in crypto in general. In sports, relationship with the crypto world it has a lot of ups and downs. Mm-hmm. We had the early 2020 where everything exploded, especially after COVID with NFTs. And you have many projects like, socials with the fan tokens, NFTs, as I said before, companies like Draper Labs that are doing very interesting things using blockchain. But there was a time where I felt that every company was using blockchain world to make them look cool, but the product was not really using the blockchain technology in an effective way. I'm curious to get your view on how do you think blockchain technology in crypto can help the sport industry, changing a little bit the way we interact with fans or find alternative revenue models?
Well, I think one of the challenges in emerging technology generally is that the first uses of it are usually like fad driven. So, if you go back to the original, like to the internet, actually, the first uses of the internet were very fad driven. What I mean by that is people didn't move business communication online. Like that wasn't the first form of online community. Like that wasn't how the internet was used for communication. It was used ICQ, which I'm becoming old now, but like ICQ was these like servers where you basically just hopped on and chatted about random stuff with random people. And so that technology eventually, and it took almost 20 years, became Slack. And then of course, Microsoft Teams copied Slack, right? But it took 20 years for sort of chat communication on the internet, starting at ICQ, to eventually become serious business communication. And now I think probably most tech companies and almost every company in the world runs on some combination of Microsoft Teams and Slack. But that took 20 years, right? And so usually in technology, like the first application of something is very much a fad. And I think you saw that in that wave you're talking about in 2020 in sports. Now, what do I think will happen when it moves from sort of fad and like gimmick to real? I actually think that in the future, the most successful sports teams will be owned by their fans. Today, most sports teams are owned by families, or increasingly there's more private equity. I think you're going to see an arc where a lot of the families sell to private equity. The private equity messes them up, as they do most things. And then those private equity teams, will eventually end up in the hands of their fan base. The best way to do that is to honestly put that on a public protocol, on a blockchain, and have a native digital sort of internet asset. Why? Because one, you can incentivize certain behavior. So you can, distribute ownership to particularly dedicated fans. You can pay fans for working in the stadiums. As you probably know, one of the biggest challenges to a football stadium, NFL or football here in Europe, is the fact that you need a huge amount of employees, like 15 to 20 days a year, right? Which that's a difficult thing to do. If you had everybody own part of the team, you could pay them in the sort of currency of the team itself to be working at the stadium, right? And so you can sort of create like a self-reinforcing economy with these crypto assets. And I think eventually people will apply those to teams. And you can even extend that even further and think about players, which is the number one cost of sports teams. If you were paying players in all or part of a token that was attached to the value of the sports team, every player on the team would be incentivized to make that team more valuable. And I think, look, you can have very valuable teams that don't win. It's very difficult. For the most part, the teams that win are the most valuable ones.
Yeah.
Right. And so in the long term, at least. And so I think that, using these sort of digital assets, you can sort of decentralize the ownership and brand value. You can basically bring your whole fan base, your employee base, your players into the process of making the equity of the team valuable. And when you have everybody sort of rowing in the same direction and economically incentivized to make something valuable, it's a lot easier to make it valuable. And so I think you'll see, a couple of teams do this kind of out of desperation. And then it will really start working and teams will almost have to do it to compete.